You assert that good biblical theology satisfies our deepest psychology.
Mm-hmm.
Can you prove that?
Well, I think, I don't know how much I can prove, but what I liked about Viktor Frankl's psychology, it was there an assumption that we want to believe that we're in a story going somewhere. I think that's why there are so many meta narratives in novels and movies is like, and we want a happy ending, and we're kind of uneasy about the dystopian stories, and the fact that there are dystopian stories tells us about this idea that we're accepting that our life isn't going anywhere. And it leaves us with a bad taste in our mouth because we want to believe psychologically that our life is going to end in a happy ending, that we're just 100 pages in on a 200-page novel, and this crisis I'm going through, a crisis of meaning, a crisis of purpose, is not the end of my story. So that's like a psychological angst that we have. That's why Ecclesiastes is appropriately unsettling, because it gets at the really heart as to what drives us. And so that's psychological. That's a psychological desire we have of wanting to believe that our life matters. And if we like, my dog doesn't have existential questions like, why do I keep chewing on this bone? Like, what is the purpose of my life, kind of thing. Doesn't have existential crisis, but humans do, because we want those questions answered. And I believe not that we have everything answered, but if we can look at it through a 4-part story, at least can satisfy very much of that. And I think that's what Ecclesiastes is trying to do. Life under the sun, from this perspective, it doesn't seem like that answer is there. I can't find that answer through human reason. Viktor Frankl couldn't give us that answer, and he admits that, but biblically we can.
Yeah, this isn't something you necessarily explicitly addressed in your book, but I want to play in the mud for a second, if
Yeah.
you're willing. I couldn't help but think about, you hinted at the reality that vocation is unique to humankind.
Mm-hmm.
And like you just said, your dog doesn't wonder about the big questions in life, right? And that is, you could argue that's part of my having been created in the image of God, is that I have a vocation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what impact from that perspective, like in that pigeonhole, what impact does something like evolution or the Big Bang or some of these secular explanations and even eschatologies, what impact do they have on vocation,
Mm-hmm.
and how does that relate to meaning?
Yeah, they're not psychologically satisfying. We can't actually live out that worldview. You can't stand on that worldview that what I'm doing doesn't matter. I'm an accident. I have no more value, and you have no more value than that rock right next to you. We can't live like that. And so you can believe in an evolutionary perspective, but you're gonna have to borrow from Christianity to actually live your life at some level.
That's really well said.
Yeah, so I think that's, and I think that is why there is such a return right now to Christianity, at least to explore it, is because that crisis of meaning is saying, like, I've tried everything else and nothing is giving me that answer. And so again, this is all just a change of perspective. You don't necessarily have to change anything about your life right now. But if I believe and I know for sure it's going somewhere, I can sit in this mess right now, and I don't necessarily have to change everything right away. And the reason we know that's true is because Jesus has a perfect track record. It's a long story with hundreds of prophecies, and he's been right. The Bible's been right about all the prophecies of his first coming. And they were all separated by lots of time. They were all miraculous to have all of the prophecies come true. And if he was right about all the prophecy about his first coming, we can also believe in all of his prophecies about his second coming. That means we're in this story that makes sense. And at some level, it's a story that we can build our life on. And that's what Jesus says. If you hear my words and put my teaching into practice, you're going to be like somebody who stands on a rock, and the storm's going to come, the rain's going to fall, and you're going to be able to stand. Again, not changing your perspective, but changing what you're standing on.